Dana Scully, FBI. That's close enough, both gingers. The X-Files, a sci-fi series created by Chris Carter that began running in 1993 and in its original run ran till 2002. Then had 2 short seasons, one in 2016 and 2018, and 2 movies, one in 1998 and one in 2008. And The X-Files was largely characterized as sort of a monster of the week sci-fi series, where 2 FBI agents, played by David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, solved various crimes involving the spiritual, the supernatural, or just monsters. And it was a lot of fun, until it jumped the shark, but then it became fun again. Now, as far as props go with the series, they changed constantly, as you would imagine, and it was filmed in both Vancouver for the first few seasons, and then it was moved to LA to accommodate Duchovny. But the very common props that are seen all the time in the film largely revolve around both the Morley brand of cigarettes, which was actually made famous by X-Files, and in fact resulted in a lawsuit by Fox against Earl Hays Press, the creators of Morley cigarettes, saying that they should be the ones that own Morley because they made them famous. Well, in court, it then turned out that Earl Hays Press has been making these since at least 1939, and Fox lost. And the other prop that are regularly seen in almost every single episode, as a matter of fact, are these. The FBI IDs carried by Dana Scully and Fox Mulder. Now, the very commonly seen wallet ID is made up of about 4 parts. You have this card here, this card, the badge medallion, and then the wallet itself. Now, this particular wallet is kind of a generic wallet. I need to have a better one made. But this medallion kind of sets these badges apart from a lot of the other replicas made, as this one is a bit too accurate for an actual screen-used badge. These 2 cards, they came directly from Earl Hays Press, but this ID card, this font right here, sets this apart as being from the X-Files. This card, this blank, is actually the standard card used for FBI badges and FBI IDs by Earl Hays Press for the vast majority of every production they've done in the recent years, since the 90s. And you can see the font in FBI is different, and Special Agents Justice Department, the whole badge is set up differently. It's a different color, it's a different font. This was designed by the art department for the X-Files, and these badges were made specifically for the X-Files. In fact, this one and the one for Fox are actually production made. They were made during the 1990s run for the X-Files. The other piece that sets this apart from a lot of other replicas is the photograph. That photograph actually came from the files of Earl Hays Press. That's from the original artwork intended for these IDs. Now, there's a version of this photograph where it goes further down and there's more of her shirt showing, and the same with David Duchovny. There's a little bit more of him in some IDs. Some are different. There are multiple variations of these IDs throughout the seasons because of this. So, speaking to prop master Kirk Corwin, who was prop master on a couple of seasons of The X-Files, the most stolen item from set were the Scully and Mulder badges. So they would just constantly disappear, and they constantly have to make new ones, like I'm doing here. Now, this medallion that's on here is actually really accurate to a real FBI medallion. And these came from Maggie Spack Brown. Now, if anybody's ever heard that name, you know that she was probably one of the greatest jewelers of Hollywood ever. She created everything from the original Star Trek series up into the early 2000s. Any bit of jewelry that was needed to be made for Hollywood, she made it. And these came from her molds. So these are very, very accurate FBI medallions, whereas the ones used in the X-Files weren't. They actually tended to be pretty bad on occasion. Now, the signatures on here for Dana Scully and then for the director of the FBI, the signature for Dana Scully was actually done by graphic designer Kim Behrens at Earl Hays Press. That's me, and that's also me. Now, the inconsistency in signatures is actually kind of accurate, since while the ID cards themselves were made at Earl Hays Press, those were sent off to the production, and then these IDs would have been made on set or somewhere nearby by the prop master. And the prop masters changed throughout the run of the series. So they would be the ones signing them, or one of their assistants would be the one signing them. So Fox Mulder and Dana Scully's signature changes regularly, as does the director's signature. So it's kind of accurate. I didn't really bother with that part of it too much. Now for these IDs, the clip-on ones, I used the same card, but you can tell they're slightly different. One is a lighter blue, one is a darker blue. This is a blank, and you can see a little bit of inconsistency down here where it's not quite printed. That's this one here, and this is a digitally printed version of this. This is a reprinted one from several years after the production, though this design was made for X-Files. And you can see that same issue right there. That is a result of the digital reprinting of it, whereas this one is actually original offset printing made for the X-Files. This is one of the original chest badges, one of the original clip-on badges made for the X-Files production, and it's nice and crisp down here. And you'd notice the photo is offset on both of them, whereas this one's covering the word signature and this one barely has it exposed, but it's cutting down to that. That's also consistent with photographs of surviving FBI badges. They weren't perfect. None of this was ever perfect. It was all thrown together as quickly as possible because they had to get it on set. And when you're making 10, 20 of these at a time, you're not that concerned with something that can barely be seen on screen. Now, since I have the unique advantage of being able to go to Earl Hays Press to build something like this, I went ahead and built them roughly the same way they would have done on set, by hand cutting out all of the photographs after they were printed out. Admittedly, they were printed out on a digital printer, and then hand laying the entire thing together. I just used simple white glue to apply them together, and yeah, my phone screen is cracked. As these cards would be laminated, it would just hold the picture in place. All told, I made about 5 sets of them, and it was really just for myself and the staff at Earl Hays. And as stated before, the Fox Mulder signature, I did those myself, as well as the director of the FBI signature, and graphic designer Kim Behrens of Earl Hays did Dana Scully's. After they were all laminated, I went ahead and used the corner cutting machine, which you would have seen if you watched the video I did with Adam Savage, where we made the Blade Runner ID cards. Now, while these weren't made at Earl Hays for the production, I just went through the same steps with these. I then used a slot punch to create the hole for the little clip, installed that clip, and you have yourself a pretty close to screen accurate clip-on ID card from the X-Files. Now, I made these to explore the process of how these IDs were made for X-Files, and they won't be sold to the public. These were just made for the purposes of education. But I would very much like to thank all of the folks at Earl Hays Press for giving me the opportunity to share these stories with you. Now, while the badges are not for sale, the Morleys are, and you can find them at theearlhayspress.com. Thank you for watching. Props to history.